Hi, kiddos. So we're going to be reading chapter 7 today of the Year of Miss Agnes. And you can see we have our main character chart. And yesterday I didn't have you add anything to this, so probably today I will. That will be our assignment. So let's open up to chapter 7, and that is page 41. And again, what we're going to be doing with the main character chart is anytime our main character does an action or says some words or explains a feeling, we write it down over on this side, and then we figure out what does that tell us about the character. Okay, chapter 7, page 41. Miss Agnes used the big map to teach us geography. She pointed out the continents with a yardstick, and then she showed us how to find Alaska every time. We had to look for the old man's beard and the fat nose. The beard was all islands, the Aleutian Islands. I never knew about those. Then she took out a folded up map, a map of just Alaska. It was as big as 2 desks. So we pushed little Pete's and Roger's desk together, and there we were. There was the Kukuyuk River, our river, and the Yukon. Down below us, and all the villages, even Dolby, our old village that no one lived in anymore. And there was Fairbanks and Anchorage. All the little creeks were there, and the long lakes and the sloughs. So something tells me this is the first time Fred has seen her state, seen the map, and she's beginning to make sense of the fact of where she lives in the world. Little Pete and Roger got just excited showing us where their trap line was and where they set the blackfish trap and where their dad shot the bear. It was so interesting somehow seeing it there on paper. I never saw the big boys so excited about anything in school. I asked Miss Agnes where Juneau was, and she showed me way down at the bottom in the part she said was called the Panhandle, because that part looked like a long handle and the rest of Alaska like the pan. I ran my finger from where we were on the Kukuyuk River to Juneau and thought of Daddy making that long trip. It was a long way to go to die. So now we know where Daddy had died. Miss Agnes said she was going to teach us every one of the countries on the big map so we'd know everything about the world. There were places where it was hot all the time and where they never had seen snow. There were places where it was cold in the winter and hot in the summer. I could hardly wait. After Miss Agnes folded up the big Alaska map, she gave us all a paper with arithmetic on it. Arithmetic is another word for math. She made one for each of us, and they're all different. Charlie Boys and Selena just had numbers on them and places to draw things to see if they could count like. I was 10, so my paper had some hard adding and some time takeaways, meaning subtraction. Marie's and little Pete's and Roger's had lots more on it than mine did. I always hated this arithmetic, and I always just wrote any old numbers down before, so I wouldn't have to think about it. And if the teacher wanted me to do it right, I would cry and carry on. Then they would leave me alone about it. So I'm going to write this down, that on page 43, it said, I always wrote any old numbers down before. So, whoops. Numbers down before. So this is when she's doing math, when Fred is doing math. Okay, so what I'm going to have you guys do is this right here is an action. She's also kind of talking in words. But what does this tell us about Fred? Okay, so she's expressing this. What does that tell us? So you guys are going to fill in this part. Okay, let me keep on reading. And I'm down 43. Even if writing was fun, when Miss Agnes showed us how, there is no way she could make this arithmetic fun. So again, arithmetic is another word for math. After she walked around to see how many of us could do the figuring on our papers, she told us the story of Sam Dubbin. That's the old man who'd had the mother named Frederica. Sam Dubbin came from far away too, a place above the boot, Yugoslavia or something. And then he made a store here long ago up around Alcacat. So she's talking about someone else that maybe she used to teach. He'd made a lot of money because there was a lot of mining camps around here in the old days. And those miners would buy anything. But that old Dubbin couldn't read. And he couldn't do arithmetic, only a little. After a while, people began to cheat him. So I think Miss Agnes is talking about this person who was an adult who couldn't read and he couldn't do math. And I think she's trying to get the kids to understand how important education is. And he lost all his money. He needed to go back to where he came from, broke. All that money got cheated out of him because he couldn't do this arithmetic. Miss Agnes was going to teach us so no one could cheat us. Like if we went to a trader in Fairbanks and sold our furs, when they added it up, we'd know if they shorted us, or another way of saying cheated us. Or if we went to a store and gave them money, we'd know if they gave us back the wrong change or charged too much. It could happen if you're not smart. So right then and there, I made up my mind I was going to get good at this number stuff. All right, so I'm going to write that. Fred says, right then and there, I decided to get good, good at this number stuff. Now, that is on page 45. Page 45. And I forgot, oops, hello, Miss B. I forgot to put that on the other one. Page 45. And let's get this. So I always like to change the font so that we can basically tell that it's a different day. And I believe, was that 43? That next quote is page 43. So we have here, right then and there, I decided to get good at that number stuff. So what does this tell us about Fred? Okay, up here she's talking about how she didn't like the arithmetic. And down here she makes a decision, okay, I'm going to change this. What does this tell us? What trait is that? So I would have you guys write that there. Okay, let's keep going. After school, little Pete ran home and got his dad, Big Pete, to come and look at the map of Alaska. I was staying after help Miss Agnes. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want school to end ever. Big Pete was embarrassed to come into the school, I could tell. He didn't speak English too good, so he just nodded his head up and down when Miss Agnes talked to him. But he got all excited about the map too and started to talk in Athabascan to little Pete. Athabascan is a native language of the Alaskans, of the Indians. So we now understand that these kids speak two languages. they speak English, and they speak this native language. Just like a lot of my students, they speak Spanish and they speak English. One place on the map he said was wrong. Some way the creek turned, like seemed they looked at the map a long time, and then they finally left. It was really funny about Big Pete because he was the littlest man you ever saw. He was a little bigger than me. Mama said he always liked that, just a little thing. And then he got married to Lena, and they had Little Pete, and that's when they started to call him Big Pete. But now, Little Pete was way bigger than his father, way bigger than anyone else in the village. Little Pete was just a giant, and he was still growing. Grandpa said his head just scraped the top of the school door, and Big Pete was like a Wolverine, Grandpa said. He could get madder than anyone, and if he was mad at Little Pete, it would look so funny, him yelling up at Little Pete, and Little Pete just looking down at him, scared like. Little Pete was as gentle and kind as a big moose, and here he was, and here he had this scrappy little father. So they're kind of talking about Big Pete and Little Pete and just how different they are, giving us some context to these two people. After they left, I helped Miss Agnes wipe the desks off with hot soapy water, and then Miss Agnes watched the blackboard so it was perfect again. I couldn't do it like that. I always got it smeary. I watched her long, skinny arms up and down, and she moved so fast always. Miss Agnes, I said, why did you quit teaching school at Alcatet? Goodness, it was about time I quit. All those children must have got tired of me long ago. She looked at me to see if there was enough answer, but she could see it wasn't, so she got serious. And I want to write here that there's an action that Fred stays, let me get the right, Fred stays to help Miss Agnes clean the classroom. And that's on page 46. And again, that's an action. What does that action tell us? Now I'm going to stop here and I'll do part 2 in a minute. Okay, kids, see you in a bit.